Okay, we're going to continue with chapter 17 and 18 today in Ivy's part of the story in Echo. When Ivy answered the brisk knock at the door the next evening, she was surprised to find Mr. Ward standing in front of her. He cleared his throat. I'd like to speak to Mr. Lopez. Papa came up behind Ivy. How can we help you? Could you step outside for a few minutes? Papa grabbed his jacket and pulled the door closed behind him. Ivy watched them through the front window, frustrated that she couldn't hear. Papa leaned against the truck with his arms across his chest, listening. Mr. Ward stood in his usual stance, hands behind his back, elbows out. After Mr. Ward walked to his car and drove away, Papa came inside, his brow furrowed. What is it, Victor? Asked Mama. He saw the vandalism at the Yamamoto house, and he thinks he has a solution to end all of this. He would like to meet with Kenneth Yamamoto when he arrives. He wishes to buy the property. He said that the first time he made an offer, the Yamamotos were insulted because it was much too low. He realizes that now. I told him Mr. Yamamoto has written that he does not wish to sell under any circumstance, but... But what? Asked Ivy. Mr. Ward said every man has his price, and he is right, Ivy. If the Yamamotos agree to sell, he said he would consider hiring me as field supervisor, but he made no guarantee. I said I would arrange the meeting because it is not my place to say no. It is Mr. Yamamoto's decision. Mr. Ward wants to inspect the property inside and out, the house, the shed, the garage, before Kenneth Yamamoto arrives. Ivy felt the blood rush to her face. What if he discovered the door in the back of the closet? Ivy tried to sound casual. Why? He says so he can prepare a worthy offer. He will bring his lawyer with him to advise. But I sense there is something more. I think I know, Papa. Susan told me Mr. Ward thinks the Yamamotos are spies for Japan. What? Said Mama. Spies? Ivy, what nonsense is this? I'm not making this up, Mama. Susan said her father thinks that inside the house there are maps and secret documents that helped Japan bomb Pearl Harbor, and if it can be proved, then the Yamamotos can be sent to prison, and they will lose the farm because the bank can sell it to anyone who has the money to buy it. Mama looked at Papa. Victor? Papa rubbed his chin. It makes sense. If Mr. Yamamoto does not want to sell, and Mr. Ward can prove something like this, it is another way to get the property. He asked me if I had been inside and what had been left behind. I told him that you and Ivy had opened every cupboard and door and saw nothing but the family's personal belongings. That is true, said Mama. Right, Ivy? Ivy nodded, but she squirmed from her secret. He said, nevertheless, he would consider it a favor if he could take a look because he does not want to purchase if there is evidence that something un-American took place there. It would give the property a reputation, a problem that would make it difficult to sell again someday. I think what Susan told Ivy is right. Mr. Ward wants to find any evidence that can implicate the Yamamotos to get what he wants, and he is bringing his lawyer as a witness. Victor, you cannot be serious. Guillermo worked for Mr. Yamamoto for years. Surely he would have mentioned. Luz, I am serious. Mr. Ward, I see it in his eyes, said Papa. He believes that by purchasing the house and getting rid of the Yamamotos, he is protecting the neighborhood and his family. It is personal to him. He thinks Kenny is responsible for his son dying, said Ivy. Mama's forehead wrinkled. What? But how could that be? Mrs. Ward told me her son died at Pearl Harbor. Mr. Ward didn't want Donald to join the Marines, but Kenny talked him into it because they were best friends, said Ivy. But that is misguided. Oh, that poor sad man, said Mama. Victor, are you going to agree to let him in the house? What am I to say? If I do not allow him in the house and Mr. Ward somehow convinces the Yamamotos to sell, then he will hold it against me. You know what that will mean. He would never hire me and we would have to move again. I don't want to move, said Ivy. None of us want that, said Mama. Papa cleared his throat. Luz, he would like you and Ivy to be there too, since you have already been in the house. When? Asked Mama. Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Mama took a breath. Let us be practical. We should not worry. There is no harm in them looking. Once they see there's nothing to find, it will all be settled. Ivy went to her room and lay on her bed and worried. When they inspected the house, they would surely find the door in the back of the closet. What if there was something un-American behind it? How could she find out? One idea kept shoving its way into Ivy's thoughts, even as she dismissed it as disobedient and dangerous. She remembered a question she had asked Fernando. Who will fix things while you are gone? And his answer, you will. She rubbed her forehead, knowing how she could do it. Today was Monday, and she had until Friday afternoon. The bigger problem was when. The thought that crossed her mind next was the most overwhelming. If she found something suspicious, what would she do with it? Okay, so your first question for this section is, why did Papa agree to let Mr. Ward see Mr. Yamamoto's house? And we see him on this previous page talking about that if he does sell, then Mr. Ward would hold it against him if he didn't show it, and he still wants to stay there. So in some ways, Mr. Ward has a little bit of power because he is offering to buy the house, but with that would come Ivy's dad's job. Okay. 18. When Ivy arrived home from school on Wednesday afternoon and found the house empty, she knew it was her chance. Mama had left a note. She was working at the Wards until 5 o'clock. Papa was at a meeting with the parents from Lincoln Annex and wouldn't be home until dinner. Ivy rushed to the kitchen drawer by the back door, hoping Papa had left the big ring of keys. To her relief, he had. She slipped it into Fernando's jacket pocket and ran from the house. As she jogged through the grove, the keys bumped her side with each footfall. At the back door of the Yamamoto house, Ivy looked over both shoulders to make sure no one was around. Then she quickly slipped inside, still catching her breath. It felt strange to be in the house alone, with only the silence to keep her company. She went straight to the third bedroom, where she closed-pinned the curtains to allow as much light as possible into the room. Heart pounding, she opened the closet. One by one, she scooted boxes into the room. When there were only 2 left, she pushed them closer to the door and stood on them to reach the top padlock. Her hands trembled while she tried several keys. Finally, one clicked and she removed the lock. She shoved the 2 boxes into the room, so there was now a clear path to the door in the back of the closet. The bottom padlock sprang open with the first key she tried. Her breathing quickened. She eased open the hidden door. Musty air and looming shadows accosted her. She took a deep step inside, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dimness. The larger figures in the room took shape. Incredulous, that means she could hardly believe it. She walked farther into the room, not sure at first what she was seeing. And then she slowly began to understand what it all meant. The back wall, the one that faced outside, was covered end to end by a Japanese screen, painted with delicate tree limbs and cherry blossoms. She peeked behind it and saw a wall with a set of double doors that met in the middle. The revelation of what was on the other side hit her. The wooden lattice and the climbing vines. That's why Mr. Yamamoto didn't want Papa to cut them back. Doing so would have revealed the doors. Ivy ran her finger over a stack of papers on a table. Were they the documents that had helped Japan bomb Pearl Harbor? She glanced at a row of books. Was this the evidence that would send the Yamamotos to prison? She looked around the room. How had they accomplished it? How had they maneuvered everything in here? Clearly, far more people than just the Yamamotos were involved. Had there been work parties and meetings and secret late-night deliveries? It appeared so. They were all guilty of the same thing. Ivy's eyes strung with tears. It was all so sad, it felt so wrong. Mr. Ward had been right. The Yamamotos were hiding something big. She left everything as she found it, padlocked the room, and rearranged the closet as it had been. Fernando had said that Americans all over the country were doing their part, big and small, for the war. I will do my part, she whispered. On Friday afternoon, she would show Papa and Mama and the lawyer and Mr. Ward the truth. It was her duty as an American. Okay, so we're going to stop there tonight, but I want you to think about What do you think it is that she saw? Based on the way the author is talking here, she's not really giving anything away. But do you think that it's bad? Do you think this is something that's going to show they are spies or something that's going to show they're not spies? What are your ideas as to what Ivy sees? She does decide to show them. So what is it? Give me your best thoughts on what you think it is that Ivy is seeing. Okay? All right. We will. That's what I want.